Click play and call it work.
Hey everybody, Matthew here from MiniWarGaming.com, and welcome to this week's Sit and Talk. This is our weekly show where one of the content producers will answer your questions about pretty much anything you want to talk about. Typically it's about wargaming, but sometimes we get into more personal subjects or business or just plain silliness. And as usual, the first 30 minutes will be available for free, and then I'll do another 30-minute session just for our Vault members, which will be at the link below. If you're not a Vault member, you can still click it, get a free 7-day trial to the Vault, and help support us to make even more videos. And next week's guest is going to be Quirk. So when you leave a comment below, start it with Quirk if you are asking him a question for next week's show, or start it with Matt or Matthew if you're just responding to something that I said in this show, because I do like to still read the comments afterwards, even though I'm not the one replying to them next week. And then what you can also do is thumb up any other questions that you would like to see answered, because what we do is we take the top 10 thumbed up questions and then just random questions after that. So it's not first come, first serve, although obviously the earlier you ask questions, the better chance it will be to be thumbed up. And if you are watching us on YouTube, comments will be disabled because we want you to leave the comments on our website, where it's easier for us to sort them and print them out using the handy dandy program that I wrote for it, rather than having to use the format that YouTube has, which is much harder to print off. So without further ado, I'm just going to jump right into the questions, starting with Necronomicon. But before I do that, I'm going to take this little smudge that's on my glasses that is really bothering me. As I'm looking at you, I just keep seeing this smudge, and I have to get rid of it. Otherwise, I will go crazy. Ah, there we go. Necronomicon. Matt, have you noticed that whenever MiniWarGaming does a narrative campaign, the armies involved get an update? If this rule holds true, then your next campaign should be Sisters of Battle versus Squats. I've noticed that there is a certain serendipitous whateverness whenever we do stuff, that there's been some times where they've been updated. There's one time that Dave did an orc campaign, a narrative campaign. This is a while ago now. And then the orcs were getting an update, and he had already filmed the entire thing. And so he released it all in 1 week, because it was like the week before the new orcs were going to come out, because we can't put out a campaign after the rules have been updated and have it be old rules. I know some people would say, sure you can, it's just a narrative campaign, but even in the narrative campaigns, people talk a lot about the rules we get wrong, or rules that they want to see us do. And so if people are really still interested in that aspect of the game, which I think they are, even if it's a narrative game, then I think having old rules mixed with new rules is just going to confuse people. Some people won't realize that we're using old rules, and they'll get upset that we're using the wrong ones. And it's just better not to do that. The same thing happened, slightly different, but when we were doing the Rise of the Blood Reaver, that was demons versus Sisters of Battle, Imperium, that kind of thing. It was Sisters of Battle, right? No, it was Grey Knights. Never mind. It was Leland playing the Grey Knights. And partway through that, we were still filming it, the Khorne Demonkin came out. Now, we had almost finished filming it when that happened. Now, thankfully, in that case, it wasn't Chaos Demons getting an update. It was a kind of a new codex, the Khorne getting their own thing, but still all the old rules were still valid. But it would have been nice if that had come out just a month or two earlier, because then I could have done Grey Knights versus Khorne Demonkin, because the Khorne Demonkin was a lot more powerful than just vanilla Khorne within Chaos Demons. So there's that too. And it's happened with other ones as well. But, you know, it's funny because some people actually think that Games Workshop is basing it off of what we are doing. And I know for a fact that it's not, because they plan far in advance what they're releasing. So if we happen to come out with a campaign and then a month later those armies get updated, then it's purely coincidence. Let me just check something. It seems that this is set too loud. No, everything is fine. Just checking the volume. It seemed a little off, but hopefully it sounds fine. So yeah, there was even the one time where we did the World Engine campaign, which was the Necrons and their big Death Star. And then the Black Library came out with a book called The World Engine, and people were like, hey, they ripped off your idea. But the thing is, I got the idea from the Necron Codex, which briefly talked about a world engine. And so really, I was using their idea, and then they were just more fully fleshing out said idea. So it's an interesting concept. I am always curious, as to be honest, how much Games Workshop, and when I say Games Workshop, like, it's a big company with thousands of employees, but how much its management watches our videos or is influenced by our videos. And what I mean by influence would be that Maybe they notice that our narrative campaigns are really popular, so they're like, hey, we need to do more narrative stuff, or they notice certain armies are popular, and so they want to update those. I don't think that we would have a huge influence on them. I know we have a big influence on a lot of players, but not necessarily on the management, because a lot of them just I don't even think they know that we exist, to be honest. But I just don't talk to them. Anytime I attempt to reach out, I never get past the customer service people. And unfortunately, I don't really get to talk to find out what they really think in all of this. And maybe that's a good thing. Maybe it's just better for us to continue on our separate but slightly parallel paths of just working away, and we'll keep supporting their products, and they keep making good products, and everybody's happy. And we don't have to talk about any legal issues or anything like that. I'm not quite sure. But it would be cool to interact with them more, kind of like we did with Corvus Belli for Infinity and some of the other companies as well. Dr. Funkin, hey Matt, will we be seeing a review of the new Genestealer Cult rules? I would love to hear your opinion on them. We do have the new box set. They're getting painted up right now. And I would like to do something with that. It's just that I'm going to try. That's what I can say right now. I'm going to try to review it. We've just conceded the fact that we're not a news and review site. We try to do reviews and stuff that we're really excited for. And the Genestealer Cult, of course, I'm excited for. It's just that I'm in the middle of finishing up the Deathwatch campaign. And at the same time, we just finished play testing the Gorka Morka campaign that will be starting soon as well, which is going to be a ton of fun. So it's hard to find the time in between that and filming regular battle reports to do the additional stuff like the reviews. We just don't have the manpower to cover everything really, really well. And so we've just kind of said, we're not a review company. That doesn't mean we don't do reviews. Of course we do reviews. We did the Space Wolves reviews. We've done the Tower reviews. We've done the White Scars. We've done lots of different reviews, but it's more like we have a lull in our schedule, or we just see that something is super popular and we really want to do it, or it's something that we're excited for, and that really dictates a lot of what we do as well. So I think the Genestealer Cult stuff coming out is really cool. I think the Deathwatch rules for the Deathwatch guys are totally lame and totally useless, but the Genestealer Cult stuff is useful, and that's fine because the Space Marines are already fine, and the Tyranids could use the update, and the Genestealer Cult kind of gives them an update, allowing them to bring them as allies. I think the Genestealer Cult should be allied or alliable with Imperial Guard, because obviously they can infiltrate them to represent them in being allies of convenience, not battle brothers necessarily, but allies of convenience, because that would be interesting. We'll probably house rule that, but most of the time when we do narrative campaigns, we make up our own ally chart to whatever makes sense for the story as well. So overall, I can tell you a quick 10-second review of the Genestealer Cult stuff is they look cool, they look interesting, they look like they could be useful, and they definitely have some strong tricks up their sleeve. Obviously, on their own, I don't think they're going to be a viable army by themselves to take to tournaments, but maybe somebody will surprise us with some sort of formations with them. Mexicant DPS, can we have a Wives of a Wargamer episode? It would follow the Life of a Wargamer format, just featuring your wives dealing with their wargaming husbands. The more wargaming wives involved, the better. My wife actually had that idea, Wife of a Wargamer, instead of Life of a Wargamer, wife. She's kind of told me that idea a couple of years ago even, and it comes up every once in a while. I think it'd be hilarious. It's just not my style of things to do. That'd be more on Dave to decide to do that. So you should ask him, and then maybe it'll get done. But it would be definitely a funny segment between Wife of a Wargamer. Descree, hey Matt, Tyranid question. First, why no Tyranid battle reports lately? Just chance, or are there problems with them? Mainly a couple things. One, I've been busy with narrative campaigns, putting a lot of time into things like Deathwatch and Gorka Morka. And the other thing is we did our Horus Heresy as well, so a lot of my attention got poured into that. Just recently, and it's not even posted yet because I need to film another one, I filmed my first game of Warhammer 40k that I had played in probably 2 months. I'd played 30k, or Horus Heresy, and we played lots of GMing for the Deathwatch campaign. But when it comes down to it, just playing straight up regular 40k, not narrative, it's actually been a while since I've really been doing that. And that's just the way it is when we're in a smaller company with this many people. We have to kind of shift between things. The Tyranids haven't really had an update since the Genestealer, except for the Genestealer Cult, so it would be interesting to see them. But like I said, they're still being painted up, so I do have some 40k games scheduled in a couple of weeks. And so I will for sure want to try out the new Genestealer Cult stuff and see how they fare on the field. I have a funny feeling though that unless I'm playing against another army like Imperial Guard or Sisters of Battle, or ones that aren't like supercharged, like Eldar, Tau, Necrons, that whole triad right there, I think they'll still have a hard time just being still squishy as they are. Second question, as an experienced Tyranid player, do you have any tips for a new player? The Tyranid playstyle is hard for me to adjust to. I find that large chunks of my army just die foot slogging off the table. Any advice? Thanks for all the great videos. Well, the first piece of advice to any new player that wants to do Tyranids is realize they're definitely not one of the top tier armies. There's nothing wrong with that. In fact, some people enjoy the challenge of figuring out a lower tier army because you can overcome a lot of the imbalance of 40k by just becoming a better player and getting to know your armies as well as your opponents as well, knowing their strengths and weaknesses. There's only so far you can go with that, of course. And of course, the dice will throw off any sense of balance anyways. Even if something is perfectly balanced, the dice can make it feel like it's not perfectly balanced or that it's totally out of balance. But for a new Tyranid player, this would really go for any new player, would be to scour the forums and get advice there. But if you're specifically asking me, if somebody brand new saying, hey, I want to start Tyranids, what do you suggest? If we're not talking about like saving money or how to paint, if you're talking about just about what would kind of create a good army, then I would say that I would start with just look at your combined arms attachment and start to fill that out. Your HQ choice, the real contenders there, the Flying Hive Tyrant with 2 Twin-Link Devours is your solid choice. Termagants are also good HQs because they provide a bit of psychic support and they can spawn more Termagants, which can go out and score. And then for your troop choices, it's just, you have to realize that everything is pretty much only good at one thing. Hormagants are good at trying to get across the table and killing things in close combat, but they're not really good at that. It's just that they're cheap and you can get a lot of them. And you have to really choose. You can't buff your guys a lot. You've got to choose between how you're going to buff them. Like Hormagants, you don't want to give them both adrenal glands and toxin sacs, even though that makes them super strong when you put them together. It's still just a toughness 3, 6-up save model, which means it'll die really easily. And you've added like 3 points to the cost to give it both those upgrades. So you usually have to choose between one or the other. Give it poison if you know you're going up against a lot of toughness 4, so Space Marine armies, for example. It doesn't really help you against toughness 3 armies anymore like it used to in 6th edition, which I kind of miss. Give them adrenal glands if you know you're going to be going up against more vehicles, because then even Hormagants can threaten rhinos or anything with armor 10 on the back. Because when they charge in, they'll be strength 4, and there's just 3 attacks each on the charge. They can scrape them up pretty bad. Termagants are solid. They're actually a solid choice, even though they're kind of limited to what they can do. Being troop choices, also having objective secured in a combined arms attachment. What I really like to do is make the squad 50-50 between flesh bores and devours. So if it's a min squad of 10, then have 5 flesh bores, 5 devours. You can really catch your opponent off guard by how much firepower that small squad can put out. Those 5 Termagants will put out 15 strength 4 shots at an 18-inch range. You bring it up to a 20-man squad, and all of a sudden you have the 10 fleshbore ones out front who die first, and then you have the 10 behind that if they survive, you're putting out 30 strength 4 shots, which is quite impressive for them. And make sure you have enough synapse and redundant synapse. That's a big mistake I've made sometimes where I've been trying to craft a new type of army and I end up not bringing quite enough synapse, and so they just pop a couple of them. Zone thropes are a good way to fill it in if you have elite slots. Just bringing 1 zone thrope is for 50 points. Gives you some good psychic and a good bubble as well. Zone thropes are super powerful, especially when you soup them up to 3 or more, including a neurothrope, because of the spirit leech abilities and the warp blast, getting a number of shots equal to how many guys are in the group. That makes them very, very solid. In fact, they're probably one of the most effective things. Hive Guard are pretty good, especially if you give them the haywire ones. I had said before that the Impaler Cannon was better, but now we're coming across so many things that are higher armor that we have very few things that the Tyranids can use to deal with high armor. And so just having 3 small blast, strength 5 haywire is handy. The strength 8, AP4 ignore cover, doesn't need line of sight ones are great too. They have a longer range, 24 inches, and they don't need line of sight. They're also good for taking out land speeder type of things or bikes, things that can jink. But a lot of those things will have 3-up armor saves anyways, and so the AP4 won't quite get through that. And then when it comes to once you fill out all that, then when it comes to your specialized stuff to try to do some damage, you have a few choices. Like when I think of our heavy support slots, Carnifexes are solid. Whether you making them Dock Effects is obviously good. Give them 2 Twin-Link Devours and nothing else, and they're pumping out 12 Strength 6 Twin-Link shots. That's a solid option right there. Trigons and Molochs. Molochs can work, but they're more a one-trick pony, popping up, doing some damage, and then usually dying. or going back into ongoing reserves, so they're harder to rely on. Most people, when they really min-max Tyranids, they bring 2 Flying Hive Tyrants, or 3 if you bring the Leviathan detachment, but I don't like that. I just feel that that's it's too unfluffy for me, and I like to stay within some sort of realm of fluffiness. And so really it's just, there's a lot of options in there. There's a lot of things that are really, really lackluster in the Tyranid Codex. I haven't really tried out the new Gene Stealer Cult stuff, so I don't know how they work out, but I have a funny feeling they'll be a good way to ally in and actually bring Gene Stealers, because Gene Stealers, just in your Combiners attachment, they can be okay because they infiltrate, so they can be used to grab objectives and all of that, but or outflanking, but they can't charge from outflank, and they can't charge from infiltrating, so that makes them a little more limited. And then the Gene Stealers that you get in the Gene Stealer Cult have stealth, so, and I think they get shrouded too if they infiltrate for 1 turn, or something like that. I haven't fully looked over those rules. So if you want to bring in Gene Stealers, I suggest bringing in the Gene Stealer Cult allies to give those Gene Stealers those buffs and everything, and also get you access to some of the Gene Stealer Cult models too, which can work out really well. So Psychic can be a powerful part of your army. It's not as powerful as, like, let's say, Demon armies or Grey Knight armies, but it can provide a solid backbone for your army, and so kind of look at that too. Your Hive Tyrants, Turvigons, Zoanthropes are the good place for those, obviously. Stay far away from the Toxicreans and Maleceptors. Tyrannofexes are not a bad choice. They are pricey, but they can dish out the pain, especially the Acid Spray one with the Torrent Strength 6 Flamer. He can do some damage against certain armies as well. That's about the amount of advice I'd want to give in this video. Hopefully that's enough to get you started. Fleshcraft, hi Matt, why don't you use Citadel terrain? I don't really like Citadel terrain that much, except to use it to build on to other terrain. It's just kind of boring. And we've got plenty of ruins, and that's usually what Citadel terrain is. So that's usually why. We do use components of it usually to build stuff, but we don't use a lot of it. The Rabbi Ryan, hey baby, Matt. Hey Rabbi. Just wondering how you think wargaming technology will progress. What I hope to see is wargaming merging with a virtual video game type thing. By this I mean that a specialized table will be developed where a light from above projects models onto a battlefield. Players will use a tablet to move models around and perform different actions. And you go on to talk about that, for example. And they can either purchase or customize models. What do you think? I think that just sounds like computer games. And I think there's a reason that these two industries remain apart, even though obviously the IP of the one industry can be used in the other industry and vice versa. And that's because it doesn't scratch the same itch. If you just project the models onto the table, even if it's like so good that it's like the holodeck from Star Trek, where things look and feel just like models, I know for me, a huge part of the hobby is collecting. I'm not even a painter. I don't build terrain. I absolutely hate painting. And yet I get so much enjoyment simply out of collecting. Like when I get a box of new stuff from a painter, I open it up and I set it up on the table. Even before playing, and even the fact that I haven't painted it myself, I love the fact that I now own this collection. I'm a collector for sure. That's a big part of the hobby to me. The narrative is also a big part. Now obviously that can kind of go for the computer or tabletop, but there's just something lacking in the computer game aspect, which of course on the tabletop side, it lacks something that computer games provide. And sometimes you feel like one and sometimes you feel like the other. Like sometimes I just want to put down computers and pick up, heck, I just want to play a role-playing game that has no models and it just has a pencil and a piece of paper and your imagination. So there's just different types of entertainment. And so, yes, there's overlap. We have computer games that use the IP, and we could have computer games that totally mimic the game as well. But in the end, it's not the same game. So I don't think that there's a wargaming technology in and of itself would be the technology of making the miniatures, and that's progressed immensely over the past 30 or 40 years. Heck, over the past 5 or 10 years. Become much more digital, for example, a lot more digital printing, even for Games Workshop. They've moved mostly, as far as I know, they've moved mostly, if not completely, away from hand sculpting. And it's more using computer programs to do it, and then you print it, and then you make your molds and everything like that. But that's the type of technology that's going to increase. And then you also have the talent that increases too. Just like in any industry, the longer it's been around and the bigger it gets, the more people that are in it, and the more talent you find, allowing you to make better changes to that industry and make it even better. Like you think about YouTube, for example, and some of the channels out there that make these, that use computer graphics or CGI, And some of them do a better job than some movie production companies out there. They only make a 5-minute video, but still, what you look at just 10 years ago, what movie production companies were capable of, now the average person with the right amount of experience could mimic a lot of that as well. Maybe in smaller chunks. It takes a lot of time, obviously. And that's what improves over time, is just access to talent, access to tools to make things better. So will computer games and miniature games merge? I highly doubt that. Like I said, it scratches a different itch. People love the painting aspect. They love collecting. They love playing. Those who love playing and hate painting and don't care about collecting, maybe that would appeal to them. But I think that's a small portion of the market. The majority of the market will either be into collecting and or painting, and or the actual narrative and playing and then going to tournaments and all of that to get into that. So, but that doesn't mean there's not a room for what you're saying. It's just that's more on the computer game side, which is a different market. And even though it could have the same person going from one to the other, it just requires a different purpose for being. And you're not fully utilizing the advantages of computer games if all you do is try to mimic exactly what the board game is like. There's few games that mimic what the board game is like and have success. Like I think chess, for example, is obviously a very successful board game, a very tactical board game. And computer games have been made that the only reason one is better than the other is because they've programmed better artificial intelligences that you can play against, so you don't always have to play against the player to beat you at that game. And thankfully chess is such a mechanical game that they can actually program AIs to see a certain number of moves ahead and to increase and decrease the difficulty based on how far they're allowed to see ahead and make decisions accordingly. But that's one of the few games that I can think of that translates perfectly over to a computer game without needing any changes. And the only advantage to it being a computer game is that you can play against nobody. You can literally just play against an artificial intelligence. So wargaming could have that same advantage, but it's so complex that an artificial intelligence, it would be harder to program that kind of thing, and then you lose your social aspect of it and all of that. So there's my ramble on what I think about that. Pokemons. If every Games Workshop model that MiniWarGaming ever owned was permanently destroyed, would you call it quits forever and find a new career, or would you try and start all over again? Well, I would definitely not call it quits. I would replace them all. Now, we're getting insurance and everything, plus I'm sure that our market would kind of help us there as well. I don't mean they just give us money, but we might be able to do some sort of vault giveaway and get more vault members. And then there's just the fact that we've got money in the bank as well to replace them. So if the entire building burnt down, you'd probably see less videos for a little while, or no videos for a short while. But no, we wouldn't give up. We'd replace everything, at least not like model per model, for example. We'd just start over and build back up. And although we would have to, the nice thing is we don't have to start over in many ways. Like our servers are not here. Obviously, our YouTube subscribers and Facebook followers are nowhere around where we are, because YouTube is the one that takes care of that, and Facebook the other one, and all of our vault members, those are on our servers, which aren't here. So, and they're protected with redundant backups, and so we'd be fine. It would suck. It would be horrible. It would take a long time to get everything back up, but no, we would not give up. Never give up. Gene Stealer. Hi, Matt. If you were forced to enter a tournament with only Gene Stealers and Broodlords, how would you build your list? The list has to be Battleforged. Well, that's pretty straightforward, and it can't be Battleforged. Well, I guess I'd have to... The only thing I'd have access to, if you're not including the new Gene Stealer cult, is like 2 formations that are in the Tyranid data slates. There's the one that's the Manufactorum Gene Stealers that allows them to pop up. They're small groups, and the other one is the hunting. No, that's the Lictor one. There's like 2 formations which are just Gene Stealers, because you can't do a combined arms attachment, because Broodlords are not HQ choices. They are upgrades for Gene Stealer. So if you want to keep it Battleforged and not Unbound, then you'd have to do like those 2 formations, unless you're including Gene Stealer cult. But then now you're including hybrids and other stuff, and you didn't mention those. So, but that's really all you could do. There's not really many options. I would bring those formations and just spam them. You could actually spam the Manufactorum Gene Stealer formation and because they can deploy anywhere in terrain as close as 6 inches from enemy models when they infiltrate. And then they'll be in terrain, and you hope for night fighting, and then you just hope to survive turn 1 after everything's infiltrated, and then you just grab objectives, because they still score even if they don't have objectives secured, and that could work. Now, it won't work against most armies, but if I was forced to do it, that is what I would try to do. Grim5400, hello Matt, have you ever thought about doing a MiniWarGaming loot crate for the Vault members that have gold memberships? It would be cool to get a t-shirt and maybe a mini Chris has painted from one of his quick tips or something like that. And thank you for all the amazing content. The concept has, I've seen the concept, which it amazes me that the loot crate concept even took off, because it's just such a weird thing, but I can see why it has. But if somebody had told me this idea of a loot crate, I'd have been like, nah, that would never work. So it just shows you that you never know what's actually going to work. But for us to do a loot crate for our Vault members, so you're saying like at the $20 a month level, just throwing a t-shirt in there would make the Gold Vault membership cost us a lot of money. Like obviously the t-shirt doesn't cost us $20, but then we have to think about shipping and the labor and everything else. And then a miniature, like you know how much miniatures cost. Obviously you don't mean a miniature that Chris has painted. You mean like, hey, he painted this type of miniature, so we're going to throw in an unpainted one. Well, that could easily cost another $10 or $20. So it would be hard to do one. I noticed that Games Workshop kind of has the idea of the loot crate with the black library where they, for 20 pounds, they give you 40 pounds of random ebooks. And that's a cool idea, but they're not doing a subscription model, which kind of missing the point of a loot crate by not doing a subscription model, because the whole idea is that you pay every month and you choose some sort of theme. But they could do it with their miniatures, because to them the cost of a miniature is very small. It's the cost of making it that's much higher, obviously getting the molds and everything. Whereas for us, obviously buying it even at wholesale costs, if we bought a pack of Space Marines, what would that work out to be? Like, what is it, 50 bucks for 5 Space Marines? For 70 bucks for 10? I don't even know off the top of my head. But you just divide that by, even if it's just like $5 a Space Marine, that's a good chunk of the profits of people paying for a $20 a month loot crate membership with MiniWarGaming, obviously what we call loot crate. So the thought has entered the mind and quickly exited, realizing that for the most part it would be hard for us to do it. I think the way, from the little I know about loot crate, a lot of the stuff they get is probably free and it's promotional, and so they're able to get away with that. And that would work if we could have a really good like tie-in with a lot of different miniatures companies. See, that could work. If we could actually get miniatures companies to provide us with miniatures for free and then provide a monthly loot crate kind of thing with that, that could work. So there's an idea there, but we'd have to be able to make it worth their while to give us free stuff and the promotion of all of that. So maybe there's an idea there that'll have to let rattle around in my head for a while and maybe come back later on. Taimu Tohi. Taimu Tohi. Is that a Polynesian name? Or am I just totally mispronouncing that? Taimu Tohi. Tohi. Hi Matt, you must be busy with all the campaigns you are planning. Yes. But is there any chance of a Horus Heresy alternate timeline campaign in the future? Cheers, Taimu. I would say no. I don't like alternate timelines, unless you're going to do like an entire game based off of an alternate history, kind of like Fallout. It's an alternate history or an alternate timeline where, you know, we kind of take the 1950s and we or 40s or 50s, whatever it is, and it kind of freezes there, and it's like, what if this technology never existed and this technology was developed, and then all that kind of stuff. Or when you have like the weird games where it's like alternate world, what if Hitler won, or what if there was magic, like steampunk kind of stuff. To me, I wouldn't want to just do one campaign where it's like, what if Horus what if Horus won at the end, or what if Horus never went bad? I'm just not interested in that kind of stuff. But will there be Horus Heresy campaigns? I would assume that we're eventually going to be doing those too. So we're just kind of going from whatever is exciting to whatever is exciting. Like when I talked about the Death Watch campaign amongst the guys, they all got really excited, and we've been having fun with that. And now that we're nearing the end of that one, I started talking about Gorka Morka, and everybody got excited about that. And so that's really what it's based off of. What you're seeing, I kind of, in a sense, relate a bit to how Will Wheaton chooses the games that he plays on tabletop. The sponsors, he doesn't have sponsors, at least at the time that he was doing season 2. Or whatever season he's on, he doesn't have, like, the companies don't get to come to him and say, hey, play this game and we'll give you $20,000 or something. He just chooses games that he wants to play. And that way you can see his passion for it come through, and I think that's important for us as well. Having said that, there's a lot of things I want to play, but an alternate history Horus Heresy, not really high up on that list. Just about out of time, so I'm going to try to get one more in here. Dig Gemmin, Matt, if you were given $1 million on the condition you never played another miniature game again, would you take it? Yeah. Yeah, I would. Now you might think, oh, that means you're not dedicated to it. To me, a hobby's a hobby, and this business is here to feed my family. For $1 million, would I do it? I guess, yeah, I think for $1 million I would do it. You might think, well, why not? You have to realize that if I stop playing, okay, am I still allowed to run the business? Am I still allowed to games master the miniature games, like where I run the Death Watch campaign as a GM? Or am I allowed to still work here in MiniWarGaming and oversee all the content production? If I was, then that would be an easy yes, because I could use that $1 million to quickly build the business even further, and that would be a lot of fun. I would miss playing for sure, but it would be tough. For $5 million, definitely. $1 million is a little harder because $1 million actually isn't a lot of money. Like, it is, but it isn't. Like, when you divide it over the next, hopefully, 50 years of my life, that's only $20,000 a year. And obviously I got to make more than $20,000 a year in order to support my family. And so not playing miniatures games would obviously hamper that and would make it more difficult to feed my family, which is obviously a priority over whether I play or not. So interesting thought exercise though. Thanks for all your questions. Make sure you leave your questions for Quirk for next week. And click on the link below to go and watch the Vault portion where I'll continue for another 30 minutes answering only Vault members' questions. And if you're not a Vault member, you can still click it, get a free 7-day trial. We're even doing a free giveaway right now. If you actually want to go to miniwargaming.com/free, you can get the Space Marine Legion Volume 2 painting video series absolutely for free, in addition to getting the 7-day trial. So don't click that link if you're not a Vault member. Go to miniwargaming.com/free, sign up through that link, because then you'll get the digital downloads for free even if you cancel, and then you can go into the Vault and actually watch the Sit in Vault right now too. It's pretty much the same checkout process. It'll take you just as long, but that way if you decide not to keep the Vault, then at least you get to keep the painting tutorial series, which you wouldn't normally be able to keep watching after you canceled your Vault membership. So thanks for watching, and happy wargaming.